what's motivating us to expand is we're seeing a number of clients that operate in and want to deliver in a lot of cities. We're also seeing this big shift towards ultra low emission logistics and courier services, and there's a lot of cities that could experience a lot of the benefits to this. I believe we estimated the environmental and social costs and benefits that we could provide to cities to be about 14 million in Oxford alone and 4 billion if it was rolled out UK wide. So there's a huge opportunity to save the UK taxpayer money essentially on this. And people get to experience this benefit as a positive externality. You don't have to necessarily use our services to receive these benefits for your city and community and businesses and residents, but it also provides that kind of economic boost as well. Being a local service, providing sort of green, sustainable jobs, and we kind of see this is the future. Moving forward in cities with logistics, and it's that low hanging fruit that we can like achieve now. The technology exists, so it's one of those things of just let's get on and do it.
I think also we see that opportunity in those smaller like market towns and smaller cities, don't we? Where they're not really being serviced by this kind of eco courier service at all, but we've developed a specialism in that. So we think we have a kind of unique role in delivering those benefits that you're talking about by working in those places.
There's also another reason why this is such an important thing to be expanding in at the moment, which is that nationally the legal situation is changing as well. Not only is the government under a legal commitment, it's made a legal commitment to achieve net zero by 200 by 2050. The government's made a legal commitment to reach net zero by 2050, but also local authorities are now under a legal obligation to bring their emissions, their air quality within certain guidelines. So local councils, local authorities need to find ways to improve their urban air quality. And this is actually a very straightforward solution that a lot of local authorities are going to be extremely interested in now as a way of helping them reach their legal
Like
obligations.
making seeing our streets less congested. Personally, it really exercises me that the roads are full of vehicles all the time and really clogged up, and I'm having to walk around and breathe all that in, and feeling that I can sort of contribute personally something, to reducing that is very satisfying. And I think it's I'm in the privileged position of being a director of Pedal and Post, but I think anyone who invests in Pedal and Post can see themselves as helping to deliver that benefit too. Well, the basis of valuation is we use two bases as a cross check to get to this, and they gave us the same result. The first was 4 times turnover based on the latest year's turnover of 500,000, gives us slightly over 500,000, gives a valuation which we've rounded down to 2 million. And then we also, based on our future value, the projections we have, looking at the turnover in 5 years' time, and then we just went 1 times turnover and applied a discount rate of 15%, which we thought to be a reasonable discount rate for a small company like Pedal and Post, but also quite a well-established one. So it's a moderately high discount rate, but not excessively high. And that also gave us a very similar value of just over 2 million. So we've kind of rounded that down to arrive at the 2 million current valuation. The 1 times turnover rate, you then that's the post-offer valuation, and then you take away the amount raised through the offer of 450,000, and that gives you the 2 million. Well, I mean, this is an equity investment, so that means that you participate the most in the risk, but you also gain the most from the benefits and the outcome as an owner of the business. But I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that Pedal and Post doesn't have loans at the moment, so we haven't signed a loan agreement with a lender, so there isn't sort of competition there, if you like, between the lender and the equity. So although the equity sits at the bottom, there isn't a lender in there, and we're not imagining we would bring in a bank lender at this stage. We rather finance this through with the equity going forward.
Okay.
So in our fleet, we've got a mixed fleet. So we operate, two-wheeled push bikes. The absolute workhorses of our fleet were 8 for 8 cargo bikes. We operate, I think, the largest fleet of those at 10, and one of them has now done over 100,000 miles and is still going. Just with replacing its sort of consumable parts like brake pads and tires, which is an incredible achievement. We now operate sort of two-wheeled electric bikes. So you'll see the Bullet cargo bikes. You'll see them bobbing between hospitals. They're a bit better suited to that kind of work. And then we operate the much larger e-trikes and quadricycles. So we have a big fleet of Iceni e-trikes. We operate the Bayer, which is more of a German e-trike as well, testing kind of a rear drive system. And we've operated the EAVs, which are also made in Oxfordshire, up in Hayford, which is four-wheeled sort of quadricycle bikes. And all of them have kind of got their own pros and cons, like to each design and which one the riders prefer. But it's a very interesting kind of sort of research and development space at the moment. What we want to get towards is developing our own sort of hardware and developing a kind of tractor-trailer unit and semi-trailer units was part of our goals. And this should hopefully provide sort of around a 20% efficiency gain, particularly when we have breakdowns. We don't have to touch the cargo that's preloaded. We can just swap out the trike at the front, which is the power unit we're striving towards at the moment, which is another pioneering project. This hasn't been done before in the UK.
It's a little tricky one to answer. I would say, I think I would say, when Pedal and Post was founded, it was very much founded by Chris, and he was, working initially on his own and really sort of, decided he was going to bring the company forward and sort of built it up quite slowly with the riders coming in. So, if there'd been a sort of group of people who were all working together with the idea of developing the co-op, then developing Pedal and Post, then a cooperative structure, might then have sort of come to light as a possibility. But given that Chris was really the sole entrepreneur at the time, a simpler structure was a company structure, and probably going forward, that probably lends itself better to working within the industry, and then the exit that we've agreed upon, which is an ultimate sale of the business to another provider or to a courier company or to a larger investor. Which would be much simpler to do with a company structure than it would be within a co-op structure. But then I suppose, Chris, I think the values of the company are quite cooperative in their nature, aren't they? In terms of the way it's run, and in terms of the sort of the say that the workforce has and the riders have within the business and how it works, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, obviously working as a living wage business, through the sort of cost of living crisis, we also moved to being a London living wage, business, which saw couriers have 15-17% increases in their wages across that period. So we do a kind of lot of ethical sort of working practices and try and improve the welfare of couriers and riders. We practice a lot of kind of worker democracy. So we have sort of monthly staff meetings. We're trying to keep up with a lot of our appraisals. There's a lot of engagement and hopefully sort of progression as well as we develop our kind of mechanics courses and our workshops and aspects of there, and obviously developing our managerial side as well. So it's not like just working for an app with a gig company. So we kind of feel we probably sit a lot more towards that end, which I think is brilliant, and it's something that I've been passionate about for a long time, having come from 10 years background in hospitality. So
what the capital is going to be used for, it is actually all set out in the pitch deck on page 38. So the purchase of new bikes, the semi-trailers that Chris talked about for carrying larger parcels, and also obviously the expansion into Reading will require us to buy quite a few new bikes. That's probably the biggest item. We're also keen to employ new staff to enable the expansion of the business, in a depot manager and a finance manager, and they won't sort of we'll need to cash flow that for a little bit until they produce the income in the new venues and in the expansion that we're looking for. There's a plan to purchase the shipping containers because we're paying a rental on those, which is quite expensive relative to their value, and we get a return on that in just a few years' time. So that seems like a sensible thing to do. And then there's just a little bit of money that's we need to have a bit more cash in hand in order to meet some of our sort of delivery requirements and to support the repayment of a small COVID loan that we got through the COVID period. So it's basically predominantly for the bikes, the new staff, and for the purchase of shipping containers.
Okay. So at the moment, extension into rural areas is very tricky because there isn't the volume. And also in terms of infrastructure, it's not necessarily as safe for rural riders to be out on their bikes along small country roads as it is for them to be in the cities. As a city rider myself, I would definitely agree with that. But people who live rurally have got a really important part to play in this as well. We're very familiar now with the idea of offsetting our flights if when we travel by aeroplane. And people who live rurally who also want to be making their contribution to helping us out of this climate crisis that we're in would be ideal investors if they want to offset their carbon usage through their necessary car use, through having their own packages and parcels delivered by van. They've got a really, really important part to play in this. So as far as we can see it, this is an opportunity for everybody to get involved and actually to start, and continue in many cases, playing their part in us all getting out of this climate crisis.
So there's a number of kind of policies and regulations that are coming down to help us meet, the kind of the progression towards sort of net zero in cities. I say the transport policies have helped speed this up in Oxford. You've seen, a number of sort of businesses, not just us, switch to using cargo bikes because they're, more efficient compared to vans. Specifically relating to the traffic filters. It'll have kind of a minimal impact on our services, I think. I think it'll give us a boost in the sense of there's other sort of traditional parcel carriers that may struggle to adapt to these kind of new measures. Traditionally, their depots are much further out. They use diesel vans, and the kind of range of EVs is proving, a little bit sort of questionable in, more winter months, and, some of the ranges are really on the edge, to kind of, use those vehicles. So having a model like ours where they can drop off, nearby to the city, we provide that last mile service in, it helps them find, an off-the-shelf solution that, we can demonstrate we've been doing it for the last 10 years. We're experienced in doing it. We know what we're doing. And, we can really kind of inspire to what can be achieved with cargo bikes, as opposed to just using electric vans, which don't solve a number of other issues like, congestion issues. They're not necessarily going to solve, road danger issues. Whereas, cargo bikes are kind of almost described as a miracle pill with about 9 different benefits, from environmental to social benefits. So it's going to be an interesting one. I know Oxford's been a hot topic for transport for a while, but I think businesses like ours are there to help the community, businesses and residents adapt to these changes and know that they don't really have to compromise. Our services can be more cost effective, they can be more reliable, and they can actually improve services.
I think I'd put it a bit more strongly than that. I mean, we're talking about the traffic filters, but that's actually only one of some 20 measures in the Central Oxfordshire Travel Plan, which the local authority has approved and will. There's a lot of resistance, but they have agreed to implement it, so we can expect that it will be implemented. And if you look at those measures collectively, they're a really strong push to get people out of cars and vans and get them walking and cycling. And if you look at something like the low traffic neighbourhoods, for instance, the pedal and post can go straight into a low traffic neighbourhood past one of these filters where a van can't. The zero emission zone, Pedal and Post will be able to go straight into the expanded zero emission zone, where the electric vans will be able to, but the diesel vans can't. And the traffic filters, I mean, we can be confident that the bikes will always be allowed through the traffic filters, whereas you can't be confident about that for van deliveries going forward in the future. So, I think all of these courier companies are going to be looking towards cycle-based solutions for deliveries for the last mile going forward, because they can see the writing on the wall, really.
Yes, I mean, cities are certainly where we're going to find the highest drop density of parcels. So the smaller the area and the larger the amount of parcels, the more efficient we can be. But that's not to say that, we can't operate in, smaller towns and smaller cities. Once you hit a certain scale, expanding out to these areas or using electric vehicles to go sort of regional or intercity are certainly possibilities. And I think there's some really good examples in the UK, of this taking place already. I mean, our core focus, will be to build up the company in, larger cities to begin with. But for the future, there's nothing to say that can't be done. To pick up on the point around sort of cities being dangerous, I mean, we sit at the kind of confident, professionally trained kind of rider end, so we don't necessarily need cycle infrastructure to be operating efficiently and safely. A lot of sort of larger cargo bikes, you'll tend to find you get a lot more space from drivers and from other sort of road users. They are big bikes, and that does kind of discourage close passes and things, because I think a lot of people sort of see that as like, oh, I don't want that scratching my car kind of thing. But there is kind of occupational hazards that come with using the road network. And what we've really been excited to see in Oxford is schemes like the Quickway schemes, where we've had segregated cycle lanes put in, because these things will discourage car use, which is the main dangerous problem in cities, and means our team can be out and about safer. I mean, low traffic neighborhoods was a really good one, because now all the residential streets that we deliver on are now super quiet. It's just people from that community using those road networks. You tend to find they're the ones that speed less. They're the ones that are more respectful, because it's their community, as opposed to the more sort of, people from out of town who would be a bit more encouraged to sort of speed in these areas. So there's a lot of progression towards safer cycling in cities. But touch wood, in 10 years, we've had very minimal problems, and we intend to run a safe service for years to come.
I think that ONCE are still fundraising. I checked their website the other day. We may have lost Chris for a little bit. I think that ONCE are still fundraising at the moment. The interesting point about ONCE that we can make, even regardless of what ONCE in particular is doing at the moment, the wonderful thing about ONCE is that it's a fantastic example of the ways, the social benefits that cargo bikes can actually have, because they have the benefit of identifying areas that are dangerous before accidents actually happen. So whether it's ONCE or whether it's any other company that is trying to have a social benefit in terms of increasing road safety, this is a really, really nice example of the sorts of collaborative work that Pedal and Post is doing to generally make cities and towns better and safer places to live.
Is ONCE still going, Chris?
Yeah, so to pick up on that a bit more, so I believe they've got a project coming up in Oxfordshire soon. I don't know how much I can kind of say. But ONCE essentially provided sort of dash cams where we could collect data on dangerous areas, dangerous incidents. We could map them, and it was a very much more automated process compared to what you'd find with more traditional cycle cameras. So it was incredibly helpful for kind of fleet operators like us who, we've done over a kind of million miles in Oxford. So having that kind of level of data, that we can provide to, more public bodies, council, like to, a number of others, and sort of say, well, look, here's our key problems, here's where we're experiencing these, but you can also watch the video and click on that pinpoint and go, this is the incident that happened there. So it gives you that kind of extra level of data, if you like. And it was a really fun sort of, pilot project we worked with them, and they're now moving it to more of a production stage camera. So, it helps keep, it probably plays into the safety of our riders, having dash cams and things on the bikes is, that next level of sort of safety that's more geared towards cycle courier firms, not just sort of motorbikes or vans, for instance. So.
And it plays into everybody's safety, because if a junction causes a risk for a cargo bike, it's going to cause a risk for an elderly person crossing the road there. It's going to cause a risk for parents with children. It's a general social benefit. Join the cargo bike revolution and help to make your city a better and safer and healthier place to live.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, the offer's gone, well so far. We're well over the 100K mark. We're looking to get to the 200K minimum. But we think that's in shouting distance now. So do join us in becoming a part owner of Pedal and Post and join the cargo bike revolution.